Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Captain America, Brave New World. Very excited to talk about this one, Marvel's first feature. In a minute, looking forward to letting you know what we thought. Also going to take a look at The Monkey. Caught an early screening for this one. Dr. Draper managed to find some tickets to a local cinema. We went and caught it early. Very much looking forward to telling you what we think of The Monkey. Is it scary? Is it funny? Is it better than Longlegs? Stick around for the review. We're going to take a micro look at Love Hurts. The new Quan film is out. Andy went and saw it. I have not seen it, so he's going to be covering that for us towards the end of the show. We're going to talk about some underrated Oscar nominees this year, some features that maybe you haven't seen, but you might have seen on the list and thought, what is that one about? Is that any good? Is that worth anything? Stick around for that. And before we get to all of it, we need to talk about the news. And before we talk about news, we need to talk about what we've been watching this week. Andy, what's been on your watch list? You have been watching something particularly interesting, I think, that fans of the show may not be aware of. Please fill us in.
That's right. I've been going through the entire Final Destination series. I went through the whole thing, all 5 films so far, because there's a new one coming out, Final Destination Bloodlines, which comes out this summer. And I was talking with my good friend Andra, friend of the show, who was also watching them. And so I decided to just dive in. I'd only seen the first one, and I hadn't seen it in like 20 years. And so decided to take the plunge. The first one is by far the best. It's actually really still pretty creepy. The big plane explosion at the beginning is really pretty scary. And I was like, this would be terrifying in a theater because it makes you feel like you're on this plane that's exploded and about to crash. They kind of vary in quality. 3 is also really strong. That's the one that has Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's acting circles around everyone. It has the big roller coaster derailment in the beginning. 2 has the infamous highway crash where the log falls off a logging truck. Everyone is still scared to this day. Then they start to kind of dip in quality. 4 is the turn to digital film. There's a bunch of no names, a bunch of computer, some CGI, and it all looks real bad. It's also very short. It's only like 75 minutes long. 5 gets back to basics. We have a better story, still a lot of unnamed actors, but it's creepier. It's got some good kills. The CGI, there's a bridge collapse in the 5th one that starts it off, and it looks real bad. But after that, it kind of picks back up. So fun series, originally created by the creators of the X-Files, which kind of makes sense in why that first one is still really effective.
I've seen maybe the first one all the way through. I might have seen the second one all the way through. I know I haven't watched 3, 4, and 5. I just never got around to them. They were just kind of like the movie of the summer for a while. Had you seen them before, burning through all these?
Just the first one. I'd seen the first one a couple times, and then just managed to miss them since then.
Would recommend as a series before 6? Because I figured I'd just walk into Bloodlines like blind and just see what's coming.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first one is worth rewatching because that one is really good. If we're going to rank them, which I did thought through these power rankings, I would go with 1, which is the original, kicks off the idea. It is really creepy and really scary. Lots of tension, lots of misdirection. 3 is really strong. That's one that stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, where she's acting circles around everyone and has that's the roller coaster derailment, terrifying as well. 5 gets back to basics, like I said, and then 2, which is the big crash, the highway crash scene. There's lots of explosions in these films for some reason. Like, they blow up everything. They were really happy to be blowing up stuff, especially in those first 3 films when they were actually doing practical explosions. And then 4 is probably the worst one. Like I said, it's not very good. But I mean, these were like $20 to $40 million films, and they made huge amounts of money. They made between $100 and $200 million back in the 90s. So they were very successful for what they were. And we've kind of lost that mid-range, that middle budget film. So it'll be interesting to see what Final Destination Bloodlines is.
Absolutely. We've also took a look at The Substance. Andy got the 4K, but we're going to talk about that a little later in the episode. We talk about underrated Oscar noms. That's why we're running the trailer footage if you're watching us on YouTube. One of the movies we both covered this week, we both watched the Hellraiser 4K, which is kind of stunning. I was really a little nervous about this one. This was a Fathom event, came to local theaters. You might have seen it. It's the Arrow 4K transfer, and it is a really good looking copy of Hellraiser. Let me tell you, like, I figured Hellraiser might come off looking bad after all these years. Came out in '87. Clive Barker directed. A lot of gooey practical effects, right? Things coming back from the dead. But no, it looks great. I was a little worried it was going to be some kind of like James Cameron AI upscale. Looks terrible. No, dude, the Hellraiser 4K looks tremendous, and I was really cool to see it in a theater. I don't know how people watched this in 1987. Man, it must have been the wildest time coming out of that movie theater because it's a trip now. What'd you think, Andy?
Yeah, really cool to see and revisit. I did notice some things like it allegedly takes place in like New York, the reference, Brooklyn and stuff, but it's clearly in England, and every other person has a British accent, which is really funny. But it is such an effective movie. It's so squelchy and squishy and gross, and those effects still look good to this day. It's a whole like psychosexual thing going on, and it reminds me that Pinhead, as famous as and iconic as he is not the main antagonist of the film. It's Julia Cotton and Frank Cotton, and their whole love affair. So it's interesting how that entire series kind of takes a turn and becomes all about the Cenobites later. But it was a lot of fun. I thought it looked really good. Really enjoyed the score. And again, the effects are so effective still.
Yeah, it's like a special effects showcase. It's just one after another. Like, especially in the transformation scenes, like it's like reverse footage of blood going into nail holes, cut to like explosion of gore, cut to miniatures. Like it all comes together so good in a movie that otherwise like would seem relatively unassuming. It's just a bunch of people in a house and there's a creepy room upstairs, but no, there's like this whole layer of weird. I would always compare it in my head to like the Mummy from '99 with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, because you've got Imhotep in that movie, the mummy like slowly coming back by sucking up the souls of people around him, one by one, and restoring his flesh back to full power. Like it's really great. And yeah, like I always forget that Pinhead is totally not a big deal in the first Hellraiser. Like the Cenobites are really just kind of a little bit of icing around the cake. Like they are by no means the main feature, but man, everybody jumped on them, and that they made Hellraiser 2, which was like direct summer sequel, right? And then now we got like 9 Hellraiser movies. Someday we could marathon all of those, I guess.
9 Hellraisers. Yeah, I think the first 3 are theatrical. After that, they're all straight to DVD, straight to streaming.
Yeah. Either way, dude. Like, the movie looks so fantastic. I'm like really pleased. I figured going to see it in a theater, like, it's gonna look grainy or not hold up, but like, nah, dude. Absolutely tremendous. Really thought it was great. Would recommend Hellraiser 4K. Rock solid. Please go check it out. And with that, we got to talk about the news. Our first story this week, let me get it up on my screen. From the set of The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's new movie's shaping up. And I just wanted to kind of talk about it. It's not really like a news story, but I thought in my head, you know what? People should know. People should know what's happening here. So if they just saw Oppenheimer and didn't know anything about what Christopher Nolan's working on next, Andy, you want to spill the beans, or should I?
I'll be happy to. So we got this first image of Matt Damon in armor, which looks like quasi-Roman armor, or what people kind of assume looks like that from the period. And he is Odysseus. He is the title character, which a lot of people thought it was going to be Tom Holland, and then people were like, "Oh, it's Tom Holland's big break. He's gonna." But I don't know. I never believed that he was going to be that. It looks good. It does. I mean, we don't really know much. It's just him in the costume with a beard. It looks great. We really don't know much more about it outside. It's got a huge cast, including Tom Holland, Mia Goth, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Lupita Nyong'o, Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron, Benny Safdie, John Bernthal, and John Leguizamo so far. So the cast just keeps growing, and it's just kind of a who's who right now. Really impressive, but we don't really know too much yet.
Yeah, we do know that there's some set photos coming out of Sicily where they're starting to film. They've got some stuff put together out there. We know that Hoyt van Hoytema is filming it, which is real cool. He is Christopher Nolan's longtime DP. He shot Nope. He shot Tenet, Interstellar. So we know he's working with big talent. We know that he's working with a big camera, right? IMAX has a new 65 millimeter camera that they're shooting this film on. And apparently him and Hoytema are really excited to get going on this thing. Maybe they won't have to ADR the whole picture, but they probably will just end up having to ADR everything, just like Oppenheimer. We know it's got a stacked cast. We know it's a sword and sandal from Chris Nolan, which is particularly exciting. Like, I know my man has done some historical films for sure, but nothing quite like this. He hasn't really tackled like straight up myth yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays in. And naturally, because this is under Nolan's Syncope banner, we know that it's going to be coming directly from him and his usual team of writers. We know that it's probably going to have something to do with time. That's usually a very central theme in Christopher Nolan's work, though how, none of us can say for sure. But it's definitely interesting. Like, there's definitely something happening with the Odyssey. It's going to be curious to see what shakes out next. I know I've seen some people harshing the Matt Damon fit because they say it's not historically accurate. Probably. Like, I wouldn't know, man. Like, I know Nolan's never been that dedicated to that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yes. Like, does it look cool? Great. We're putting it on screen. We'll see. I wonder if we were talking about this earlier. You think Ridley Scott's scared of this? Sword and Sandal director Ridley Scott. You think he's worried about the Odyssey at all?
Maybe. I did want to talk a little bit about the modern history of the Sword and Sandal epic, which was revived in 2000 with Ridley Scott's Gladiator. That went on to be a huge success and also brought us copycat films like Troy from 2004, Kingdom of Heaven from 2005 or so, which was also a Ridley Scott film. We saw a bit of a hiatus, and then, of course, Gladiator 2. And now this, and Sword and Sandal's a big risk because they're very expensive to make, and sometimes they don't always hit. But I think in the hands of someone like Christopher Nolan, who's going to do this, as he's going to go as hard as this genre has ever had. It's going to be authentic. He's shooting on location. He's building practical effects. So I think it's probably going to be a big hit.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Matt Damon may get an Oscar nom out of it. Right, been nominated twice for Best Actor, hadn't won it. Did get a Academy Award for screenplay for Good Will Hunting, but otherwise, like, if he manages to get on that Oppenheimer track, right, like Cillian Murphy could take him right to the top. We'll have to see.
Could be.
Next story this week, AMC Stubs A-List is hiking their monthly fee, and I have seen people saying they're totally okay with this, which is nuts to me. I'm a Cinemark subscriber. All right, I'm on that Cinemark rewards program. I don't do AMC Stubs A-List, but this doesn't sound like a cheap fee. What do you know about this, Andy?
So the fees are going, most places, this is about $20 a month, a little bit more expensive in the California, New York area where it's about $24. It's going up to nearly $30 for cases. It's going up to $28, for New York and California. It's going up to $23, $24 for most other places. And they're attempting to offer value, which they're currently, you can see 3 free movies a week. Now you can see 4. Which it seems like a good deal, except there's not that many movies that come out. After 2 weeks, you will have seen everything that's out. They also are lowering the age that you can be an AMC Stubs member to 13. So the teens can be Stubs members and get on that. So, if you're near somewhere that has a big theater and it's playing a ton of stuff, maybe it's still worth it. But man, that's pricey.
Hey, nothing wrong with the movies being your babysitter, right? Send that 13-year-old to the theater. They'll take care of them over there. It's funny the 13-year-old can't have a credit card, but they can have an AMC A-List pass. AMC A-List came as a result of MoviePass. Let's remember, right? The almighty $10 a month, as many movies you want. AMC A-List spun out of that. Cinemark Rewards spun out of that. For my money, I like what I'm doing over at Cinemark Rewards because I don't plan on seeing 3 or 4 films a week. But dude, there's definitely some film heads on Twitter that are all about it. They've been like, yo, finally a 4th film in a week. Like, crazy. Seems like a lot to me. I'm not an A-List subscriber. Adam Aaron, their CEO, said that they haven't hiked this price like ever. Like, this is like a first thing for them. Our first price increase in years. I'm sorry, excuse me. And even so, A-List is still an incredible bargain. We'll have to see, man. Probably not going to hurt them. AMC's kind of the big one, but speaking of the big one, Goonies 2 is happening. Maybe. Probably. Apparently, Steven Spielberg's producing it. Variety had the story this week. Andy, what do you know about this?
So, The Goonies, which most people should know, is a big hit of the 1980s. Came out right smack in the middle, 1985. It's an adventure film with a bunch of teens from like the Pacific Northwest who find a treasure map and then go on this hunt for kind of buried treasure to, save the family home. It's a very 80s plot. It's a little bit like Indiana Jones for kids because it's got some of that scary stuff, the adventure, but it's a little bit more family friendly. And it's a who's who of cast. It originally starred Josh Brolin, Sean Astin, Corey Feldman, Ke Huy Quan in one of his early roles after Indiana Jones. It's a classic, and it's a lot of fun. And they're doing a sequel 40 years later, and it will be written and directed by the original writer and director Chris Columbus, who of course also directed things like Home Alone, two of the first two Harry Potter movies. He's a who's who of the kind of children's cinema. Really knows what he's doing. It's in good, but I think it will be challenging to update. This kind of low. A hidden adventure get a lot of that anymore, and it would be. I'm interested to see how that works in 2025.
Yeah, I like this bit. Apparently, Ke Huy Quan was asked about this on the red carpet for Love Hurts, the world premiere, where he was standing alongside Corey Feldman, co-star from The Goonies, of course, who joined him. They both said they'd love for it to happen. Feldman said, all I can say is get us all together. Everybody's looking good. Sean's looking good. Josh is looking good. We're all Sean Astin and Josh Brolin. We're all looking good still, and we're all alive. Goonies 7 Never Say Die. There's hope. I suppose so, man. It seemed like it'd be an easy paycheck for them. But before we get away from it, real quick, Andy, 35,000 foot view. What do you think the plot of Goonies 2 is? I'm going to guess that all the Goonies still live in a neighborhood nearby, or they all come together for some reason to look for some kind of treasure, and maybe there's some kids about, but it's mostly going to be the old heads, right? That's going to be who's holding that movie up.
Well, what do we do in a legacy sequel? We bring back the old characters, we introduce some new characters. Yeah, because this is literally 40 years later. So yeah, everyone's going to have a teen of their own that's going to come along for the ride. And yeah, you gotta have a treasure map. You gotta have some hidden treasure somewhere else that people stumble upon. You got to save the local bagel shop or whatever, and have at it.
They should call it Goonies 2, Too Many Goonies, because there's going to be a Goonie and then a child Goonie next to him. There's going to be a ton of them. It's going to be great. There's going to be 19 people in that cast, and none of them.
Yeah.
One more story. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just reminds me of it might be they might do the kind of thing where it's like Treasure Island, a Goonies story, so where they can kind of continue. Like it won't just be a sequel. They might like try and launch a small franchise or something.
Yeah, right. Something to do with the pirate ship from the first one. Yeah, sure. One more story this week. Captain America Brave New World is opening pretty big at the box office, despite reviews. It turns out it's not doing as poorly as I think maybe some people think. What's going on at the box office this week?
So Captain America Brave New World actually overperformed a little bit. Despite rough critic and audience scores, it made nearly $200 million at the global box office, 100 million domestic. So it's not a hit, but it's not a flop either. It's probably going to at least break even, if not maybe get a little bit to the green. So it's off to a good start, and there's virtually no competition in the next few weeks. So I think it could kind of it might have some legs on it.
I got to eat some crow for this segment, because I definitely did not think Captain America Brave New World was going to do all that good. And for the record, I don't think it's going to make $1 billion, but word on the street is it's about a $425 million bar to clear to break even. Globally, they're probably going to make that. I don't think it's going to do that good overseas, but we were talking about this last night. Andy pointed out, like, cleared 92 million globally opening weekend, like overseas, so 100 million here. So yeah, it'll probably make its money back. Seems like a fine bet for Disney. Why did they spend so much money on this movie? I don't know. How can they avoid spending this much money on future movies? Smarter budgeting. But Disney's not in that business. They're in the business of making big bets, all right, and placing them. And this seems to be one, and it seems to be paying off. Like, I know it had a ton of reshoots. I know it had a ton of problems. We're going to get into the actual movie here in just a second, but on its face, like, seems like a W, right? Disney W, I think, with Captain America.
Yeah, absolutely. One that I've been saying is that the magic of Marvel isn't the good films. It's getting people excited about the mediocre films and kind of the middle of the road stuff, that making those a hit. And that's kind of what's happened here. This bodes well for Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four this summer. If your kind of middle of the road movie does really well, then your really good movies will hopefully knock it out of the park.
All right. Well, with that, we should jump in. Well, hold on. Anything else from the box office this week? I know things are kind of slowing down, but even still, we're covering everything.
A couple A couple of interesting things. So, the fourth installment in the Bridget Jones series, Bridget Jones Mad About a Boy, had a weird opening where it opened here in the US on Peacock, but in the UK it in theaters because it's a British property, and so it's known more there. So they didn't want to risk it in the US, and they wanted to try and drive subs. Opened to 35 million globally. I think really strong start for that. Really surprising. Um, so it's strange that they didn't release it in theaters here. Also wanted to point out that the slasher Heart Eyes actually did better its second weekend than the first weekend, coming in at 22 million. That's kind of a big story. It somehow has made more, so it's doing really well. And then finally, I wanted to touch on an animated film out of China that might become the most a $2 billion film. It's called Nija 2. So it's a sequel to Nija 1. I don't know anything about it. It's an animated film. I've heard it's got great action sequences. It's really long. It's like 2.5 hours. But it has already cleared 1.3 billion. It's made more money than Inside Out 2. And everyone thinks it's going to make 2 billion, which is crazy. And like, I'd never heard about this until this week. And you got this movie. And that is just in that market. Like, this doesn't have a global release or anything like that.
Yeah, dude. I don't know anything about that movie either, but I have not been able to stop seeing headlines about it. If that movie made that much money on that side of the world and nobody here in America is aware of it, think of what like a 4-quadrant, think of how that would perform here. Like if kids and families were apprised of this thing and maybe it like were released here with the proper English stuff, like I don't know, dude. That might clear 2 billion. I don't know anything about it, but apparently it is a straight banger. Every time I see numbers for it, it's like just making more and more money. It's like people are going to see it for the 5th and 6th time. It must be great. Whatever's happening in that movie must be a great time. So yeah, hopefully we got a copy of that somewhere over here. Like that thing's gonna be the biggest animated movie ever. I think. Like it's crazy. I don't understand the legs under it. It looks like a computer simulation or something. It's nuts.
Yeah, I might check it out. I think I did see a screening somewhere around, but yeah, I did hear a description that like the final battle scenes, they're like they make the big fight at the end of Avengers Endgame seem quaint. So
Really? I heard that the current like English subs for it are real basic and direct translation, and they're not like
oh yeah, you need the
that's what I
subs.
heard. Yeah, I heard it was really 1-to-1 with the language translation. So right now it's like you might want to. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but that's kind of what I heard. I heard if you're going to see it like as an English experience, you might be a little disappointed. But I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Just seems like a big movie. Keep it on off script for more. We will report back on that as we find out. But for now, plenty of news. We got to get to the first film of the episode. I know we already talked about Hellraiser and we already talked about Final Destination, but let's get into it. Andy's going to be taking the summary on this one. Andy, please take it away.
Captain America: Brave New World. So this is the 4th installment of the Captain America franchise, and with not quite the end of Phase 4 of the or 5 of the MCU. A lot going on. I'm going to not talk about the plot as much as talk about the different elements because there's a lot going on. At the end of Avengers Endgame, the shield, Captain America's shield, was handed to Anthony Mackie's Falcon, and he took up the mantle. This also was completed through the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show from 4 years ago, 5 years ago almost, and there were a few other things. Some other characters are introduced, one of which was Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumbly, who was revealed to also be a super soldier, an experimentation from the 40s, who had fought in the Korean War, and he had been in prison for a long time and then was eventually exonerated. He is in this movie as well. At the beginning, they are invited to the White House for some sort of presidential thing. President played by Harrison Ford, of course, as Thaddeus Ross. At some point, Isaiah Bradley kind of he goes crazy. He tries to assassinate the president along with several other sleeper agents. They fail. Isaiah Bradley is arrested again, thrown back in prison. So we got to work to see what's happening, who ordered this attack. Meanwhile, there's some other plot elements. There's some sort of canister of material that everyone's after. This is where we see Giancarlo Esposito's character, Sidewinder, who's after this canister. There's some sort of mysterious buyer behind the scenes. in shadow that we don't see for a long time. There is some sort of international incident going on in the Indian Ocean with the big eternal celestial thing that's there. A lot going on. These are all the separate elements that all work together. And of course, because the trailer gave it away, we do have the Red Hulk makes an appearance in this as well. So it's a bit of a spy thriller. It's got some of that Winter Soldier feel, or things like Clear and Present Danger, The Manchurian Candidate. It's going for that kind of vibe. Doesn't necessarily get there. Lots to talk about. Some things that work, some that don't. Zach, what'd you think?
So I kind of like Captain America Brave New World. I don't love it. I don't think it's a great Marvel film, but I think it's a good one. And more importantly, and this is something you pointed out to me later that I'm excited to talk about, I think it's good enough. I think it's good enough for this to be a base for Thunderbolts to follow after, and then Fantastic Four to follow that. And a few more films in, we get Avengers. Like, and this feels like a first step towards that. It's likely due to reshoots, right? Like, it's them revisiting this over months and running it by test screenings and deciding, hey, we need to have a shot of this and we need to have an insert about that. But there's definitely some conversation in this movie about getting the gang back together. Hey, let's spin things back up. Why can't we go back to where we were before? While also acknowledging that the Marvel universe is complicated. We have Eternal stuff happening in here. There's Incredible Hulk stuff that nobody remembers that really, I think, can hamper the experience. But overall, it's pretty good action. I like Sam Wilson as Cap. Like, I like the new kid they got in here. The Red Hulk stuff is fun. It's pretty good. It's not great, but I think it might be just good enough to keep the franchise going, I think. If you know what I mean. Not franchise, implying it's going right. You understand what I mean. Like, I think it's got juice. I think it's got Riz. I think it's got enough sauce, and people are writing that off.
Yeah, people have kind of been a little bit overly harsh on this. I listened to a couple of podcasts that was like worst of the worst Marvel film of all time, and that's a hyperbole. I have seen worse Marvel films. I've definitely seen much worse comic book films. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the production troubles that this had. So this actually was supposed to come out in 2023, and it got pushed because of the labor strikes that happened in around that same time. There were also reshoots, not extensive. There was only one reshoot, but it was a long one. Giancarlo Esposito's character, Sidewinder, who's really cool. He was not in the original shoot. They kind of invented his character and plot and all this and went back and shot it. All the horror stories we were hearing about this, we were like, be a disaster. Like, there's no way. And somehow they managed to patchwork it together and get it across the finish line. And like, it's got problems, but it works.
Yeah. I think overall it's a competent feature. Like, I think it's got some weaknesses for sure. Starting with, to me, like, the action is a little flat, especially like in our open. Like, just basic fist fights are real simple, not big choreography, not big camera movements, not big lens choices. Like, it's a little flat. And I think that's because of director Julius Onah. His previous big work was The Cloverfield Paradox. That was that Cloverfield movie they advertised during the Super Bowl a couple years ago, coming out straight to Netflix. And everybody's like, what's this? And you go watch it and you're like, oh, it's kind of just fine. It's kind of just a fine, competent sci-fi movie with some big art. This kind of has that same element. Like, it's got these big Cold War elements of political thriller and espionage. That are gonna make the kids bored as hell, but the parents will have a good time. And the stuff the kids are supposed to enjoy is like the comic booky action fight sequences, which are fine. Like, I do think our conflict is interesting. Like, this kind of sleeper agent that's trying to swing on the president. We got to stop him, and he's a good guy, and we got to hurry up and make this happen is good. It does get a little bogged down in talk of like this global treaty between the U.S. and Japan that President Ross is trying to organize. And he's like, we've got to get the treaty, and we got to, what about the buyer of the thing? Like, that's all a little complicated, sure. But like, our figureheads work good. Like, you got Sam Wilson as Cap. You got his new sidekick friend, Danny Ramirez, coming hot off the set of Top Gun Maverick, who's a lot of fun. He's kind of taken up a bit of a Falcon mantle here. You've got Isaiah Bradley, your super soldier. Thaddeus Ross is a lot of fun. Ford's great in this. He works good. Couple other side characters that I don't want to reveal. Like, not bad. If anything, I think maybe the biggest thing that hurts this movie is the fact that Red Hulk is all over the marketing and is the biggest deal in it. And you end up kind of waiting around in the movie for it, because everybody who came to see this movie knows that that's coming at some point, you know, and it maybe takes a little too long to dismount.
Yeah, it does feel that that was supposed to maybe be hidden for a long time, but if you don't have the Red Hulk on the marketing, you don't have a lot of to sell this movie on. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that kind of doesn't work. Is the plot is all over the place. It's incoherent. It's a mess. Again, it's trying to invoke things like clear and present danger, Air Force One. These roles that Harrison Ford played very much. These Tom Clancy-esque films. It doesn't quite get there, but I think it works well enough. Like it's a lot of fun. I like the action. I thought the action was probably one of the best parts of it. There's a big opening shootout fight. There's a big scene in the Indian Ocean with ships and people flying and missiles, and there's lots of tension there. So I think that part works. I also wanted to mention there's a character, Ruth Bat Seraph, who's we know that we've seen her part of the marketing. She's also, I don't want to reveal where she's from, but I feel like they kind of shoehorn this in because there's not a lot of women in this film, and they had to give it to someone. Rosa Salazar was also supposed to be in this, and but was cut. Like her, and whatever role she had was completely cut from the film. She was, of course, in Alita Battle Angel several years ago, but she had a role in this, and apparently they cut the entire thing.
I correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, and I don't want this to be a spoiler. People haven't seen it. We don't do spoilers on this show, but Rosa's character, she's kind of this like elite security for the president, like working with Secret Service. At some point in this movie, I'm pretty confident she has a super suit on and never actually fights anybody or does anything with it. Right? Maybe you don't remember this. I could tell you about it later.
Is it sort of?
She's like wearing a jacket over it, but she's definitely wearing like a Captain America or Falcon fit. But then she just ends up hanging out on a boat and doesn't do anything with it. It's like they probably lost that in reshoots. Like she was going to have a fight scene or something, and
yeah, she's revealed to, there's more to her than meets the eye. She's not just a simple security government person. She's got an interesting backstory as well, which is, I mean, you learn that very early on. It's not a huge spoiler, but I won't get into it at this time. She's also incredibly short, which is funny. She's like 5 feet. She's so much shorter than everyone else.
Yeah, they definitely had to do some blocking to get her in there, but she's a good time, I think. I guess, like, I don't think this is the best Marvel movie to come out recently, but it's certainly not one of the worst, right? Like you had mentioned, like it's certainly better than like Sony's fare, like with their Spider Villain franchise movies. Do you think this has the juice to kind of get people back in the theater and get the franchise going? I mean, $100 million opening weekend, clearly America still cares. Like people are not tuned out of these movies, like how do you think it's going to affect Thunderbolts?
I think it's only going to prop it up more. That movie looks so much better, and it looks like a lot more fun, and it hasn't had the production struggles that this has had. And also, it has a lot going for it. It's a familiar brand. It's the brand. It's the Captain brand. Anthony Mackie's not super well known, but people like the Falcon. It's a good. I mean, it's a 4-quadrant film. Could take the kids. There's nothing for kids to see out right now aside from Paddington 3. So it's something that's a little bit more grown up. You can take the teens to go see. You got Harrison Ford playing the president, which is just like a role he was born to always play. So it has a lot in its favor. It is a mess. It does weirdly try to weave in the 2008 The Incredible Hulk movie, which starred Edward Norton as the Hulk, and
it's confusing.
Liv Tyler. Yeah. People, I mean, that movie's 17 years old. Hardly anyone saw it. It wasn't very good. And for some reason, they're trying to tie in a bunch of plot points from that. That is a criticism. There's too much exposition at points where people just talking a bit about, hey, remember those events from the last movie, basically? That happens quite, which also reminds me that it seems like Marvel is abandoning this idea that you need to watch the TV shows. Because it used to be like, you got to watch everything to know what's going on. It seems like there might be kind of
Yeah, and I think that's probably for the best. Like, we do not need everybody sticking around to TV shows to figure out like what's coming up next. You don't need those things feeling like homework. You don't want to feel like you have to do homework to go see the new Marvel movie. And like, Brave New World manages to stand apart. Admittedly, I think the Hulk stuff is ham-fisted. It does not work that good. The Eternal stuff works okay. It actually is nice. They're kind of starting to address that. And again, they're laying some groundwork for what's to come with the big celestial being sticking out of the end of the ocean from the end of Eternals. It's nice to hear somebody finally talking about that and talking about how they discovered this new substance on it that they can use for science experiments, and Japan wants it. We got to get it first. Like, I think that all is important for what's coming. Additionally, like some conversation around Avengers, getting the gang back together, like, that's all good. That primes the pump for what's next. But I do think this movie is maybe the smallest of like the volley that Marvel's got this year, right? Like next up they have Thunderbolts, then they got Fantastic Four after this. This one feels like the opening shot, right? Like not the big bang, but it's certainly a start. And for my money, I'll bet people turn out for Thunderbolts probably more than they turned out for this. Thunderbolts looks much more like a big, big cast feature, right? Lots of people in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that's all that I wanted to touch
I know.
on.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say on it, so we should probably move on to formals. Andy, would you recommend Captain America: Brave New World?
I would recommend it to fans of the MCU, of Captain America. It's a good time. It is a bit of a mess plot wise. It's all over the place. There's a character who wasn't added until reshoots, so the plot's a bit of a mess, but I think it's a lot of fun. The action is really good. We get our fun characters. Anthony Mackie's charismatic, as is Danny Ramirez as his sidekick. Harrison Ford is always good playing the president. If comic movies aren't your thing, it's definitely not a must see. And if you're on the fence, I'd say save it for streaming.
Yeah, I'm more in the save it for streaming boat. I do think it's a good time, but I don't think there's anything here that demands a cinematic experience. If you got kids, take them. Yeah, easy layup. It's a couple hours, right? They'll be quiet. It'll be great. You're looking for an easy date, I might recommend The Monkey instead, which we'll talk about in just a second here. But like, for what it's worth, this is good. I think it's a fine Marvel feature. I think if you're not super bent on it, you can totally wait for it to come to Disney Plus and check it out there. It might show up on Hulu. I know they got deals over there. So keep an eye out for Brave New World and Thunderbolts too. I think that'll be the thing that brings more people in. I think Fantastic Four probably even more so, depending on how those trailers shape up. And with that, we should move on to our middle segment. I'm looking forward to talking about this. This is something a little different. It's not Death of Cinema quite. It's not Trailer Park quite, but it's something that I had been thinking about that maybe we could drum up some interest, get people kind of looking at what we're doing. And I want to talk about Oscar nominees that are underrated in 2025. To look at the list and say, hey, what's something that people may not know enough about? Maybe they see it on the Oscar list and think, hey, what's this movie? I haven't heard of this. Well, maybe we can talk about a couple of those and let people know what's worth watching and what's worth skipping in case they're not caught up on the show. Most of these we've actually talked about on the podcast. If you're looking for full reviews, we have them. You can check them out on the channel. But with that, let's just jump into it. And we'll start with Andy because I know you got a few picks and I got a few. What are some of your underrated Oscar picks this year? 2025, what's on the list?
Well, speaking of Captain America and the Winter Soldier and all that, I wanted to talk about, of course, Sebastian Stan, who's had a phenomenal year in kind of more serious acting in both The Apprentice and A Different Man. He won the Golden Globe for A Different Man, the leading role there, and he is Oscar nominated for his lead role as Donald Trump in The Apprentice, a movie that a lot of people didn't want to touch, a lot of people didn't want to see, but he is incredible in that role, and it's a very effective film as well. A lot of people don't want to see it for a number of reasons, whether or not you support that person, but I think it was definitely worth checking out, and his performance in A Different Man is also very interesting as Edward, this person stricken with this facial deformity, which eventually he is cured of, but his life is still kind of a mess. Like it while his outward appearance is fixed, his inside is still under construction. And that movie is really funny and also stars Adam Pearson, who does actually have that facial condition.
Yeah, neither of these movies have gotten a lot of attention, and both for the wrong reasons. I think Different Man hasn't gotten a lot of attention because it's very low budget and it's a very odd premise, and I think people are just kind of not super drawn to it. Apprentice, kind of for the opposite reason, because it feels sensationalist, right? It's coming out in an election year, and it's about Donald Trump and Roy Cohn. But like, Stan is so excellent so excellent in both of his features, like doing career best work, kind of excellent. And meanwhile, like he can't get on actors because nobody wants to talk about Apprentice, right? And like Different Man didn't make enough money, so it's not going anywhere. There's a reason both these films have been nominated. Like they're both tremendous, and Stan's a treasure in both of them. And I think it's really stunning that he is still doing Marvel work, whereas like Chris Evans is getting a fat check for appearing in like the next Avengers movie, and he's showing up in Thunderbolts and holding down the fort with everybody else and leaving set to do like really incredible work. And meanwhile, Chris Evans is like chilling. You know what I mean? He's like in soft retirement, taking care of his family. It's kind of a bummer, dude. Like, I think Stan's really great. And I think the more work I see from him, like the better he is. What else you got?
So I wanted to talk about Monica Barbaro, who is nominated for the supporting role as Joan Baez in A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic. Mostly because she was a small role, and I was thinking about this last night. A lot of the supporting actors from Top Gun Maverick are having really great careers right now, while Miles Teller, who was in the lead role, is kind of struggling at the moment. But Monica Barbaro is really good in that role. She not learned to sing, but she sings her own stuff, and she does this thing where she doesn't imitate Joan Baez, but she kind of gets the vibe right. So she's really good in that film, and it's just, I think, someone who's been a little overlooked this Oscar season.
Yeah, it cannot be easy to act opposite Timothée Chalamet, and Chalamet sings 40 songs in that movie, like sings and performs, and she has to meet functionally that same standard. She blows it out of the water. Like not only is she like an interesting character on screen, but like you can feel that Chalamet's Dylan feels this sort of mutual attraction and respect for her. And that's because she brings that to the performance. Like it's underrated. And like, I think it's overshadowed by other performances that are very big and bombastic, but it's huge that she got a nom. And like, it's promising of a career that's going to continue turning out big performances like this. Like keep an eye on her.
I also wanted to talk briefly about Nickel Boys, which is something we haven't seen yet. It's a film by Ramel Ross. I've heard a lot of buzz. It's been talked about a lot. It's based on a book. I've heard it's a hard watch because the subject matter has to do with a boys' boarding school from the 50s that was a place where lots of abuse and murder even took place. But it's also filmed in a very unique way where there's lots. A lot of it is in first person. Extended first person view from multiple characters, and I've heard that it's really incredible from a directorial standpoint. It is heavy subject matter, and it's been hard to find, but that's definitely, and it's Oscar nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah. I would have thought we would have watched this by now, but yeah, kind of same boat. We haven't really had the opportunity. I'm hoping that there's some stuff coming to theaters right now. A lot of like the Oscar hopefuls are back in theaters, and Oscar noms are like getting more play. So hopefully we can catch it somewhere. That and Sing Sing, I'd really like to watch. I haven't seen it yet, and the only place I can find is on VOD for $20. I'm like, I'm not burning $20 to watch this once, man. Like you're gonna have to hit me with more than that, but it seems like a good time. One more on your list, then I got a few, and we'll jump into Monkey.
Yeah, The Girl with the Needle, which is an international feature out of Denmark. I heard a review of this, which is really harrowing. So this is based on. This is a documentary based on a real person. Around the 1920s, there was a woman in Denmark who had kind of an underground adoption agency, and she was taking basically children from kind of younger, destitute women that didn't want them, and kind of putting them up for adoption, collecting a fee on them. But a lot of them ended up dead, and it's a real dark thing. It's a real person, real situation, and it's one of those things that I've heard that who do you recommend it to, because it's such dark subject matter, but it is, it's a very good film, but it is a very dark film.
I haven't seen Needle. I need to check it out. Speaking of things, who do you recommend to? Actually, that's a perfect segue into this film. We just rewatched this last week. The Substance. Substance has a few noms this year, which are a big deal because it doesn't seem like The Substance will get nominated for anything because it is so weird and gross and body horror, but it's so tremendous. Coralie Fargeau's film. We just saw this last year. Andy and I went and saw it in a theater, which is nuts. And then we got together because you ordered the 4K, and we got together and watched it at your place with a good friend. Holds up great, and it's so weird, and I know so many people that probably would really like it They just have not seen it because it didn't come to their local Cinemark, right? And didn't get advertised like The Lion King, and didn't get like the mainstream attention because it's so gross and so weird and so strange. But it is so special and unique. It's my favorite film of last year. But who the hell do you recommend it to, right? Like, it's got this weird problem where it's about something complex, but my God, it is so on the nose that I know a ton of people that would just get sick watching this movie.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the opposite boat where I will recommend the the freak show stuff to everyone, even kind of laymen, because I was like, no, it's you got to see it. You got to challenge yourself. The Substance is so good. It was interesting rewatching it. Demi Moore definitely deserves to walk away with that Oscar, and it's criminal that Margaret Qualley didn't get a nomination as well. And the whole thing is just it's shot. It's such an intense pace. It's also almost like silent film. Like in the first hour, there's hardly any dialogue. It's all just on screen. It's all showing and not telling. So just incredible film.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten how brutally funny it is. Like, it's a very funny
Yeah.
movie, like very on the nose funny, like in a way that like the first time through I was like horrified by like Dennis Quaid eating shrimp, and the second time through you realize like just how well paced that stuff is. Like, really a great watch. Demi Moore is incredible. I genuinely hope she wins the Oscar for it. I think she's so great. I want to talk about The Brutalist. I know we talked about The Brutalist just a few weeks ago on the channel. We have our review up. You can go check it out. I don't know anybody that's seen this movie except for like real movie freaks, right? Like the only ones of us who have turned out to see The Brutalist, $10 million, 3.5 hour picture with an intermission in it, is the kind of people who've got a whole day to lose to go to the movie theater and check it out. And a ton of people aren't going to see it. It feels inaccessible because it's too big and it's too large, and where are you going to see it anyway? Like, I don't see this thing just showing up on Netflix, right? Like, but it's a really special movie, man. And like for $10 million, you'd think it would be cheap and you'd think it would be chintzy, and it so isn't. It's efficient and bold, and it covers big ideas in a way that I think a lot of movies don't this year. And it's got a few noms, so it's easy to say, oh, it's not underrated. It's on the list a few times for sure. But like, how many people in your life have actually seen it? How many of them will see it? Probably not many. And for that, I think it's underrated.
Yeah, like The Substance, it was another movie that has stuck with me since I saw it, and especially the weekend after seeing it, where it's dealing with really complex themes about what it means to be an immigrant, what it means to come to America, and what that immigrant journey is and isn't like, and kind of the love-hate relationship that you might have in when you're immigrating to a new country. It's got incredible visuals, big in scope, big in every way, basically. And again, just something else that really blew our socks off. Great performances by Adrian Brody. Is it Felicity Jones?
Yeah.
Or yeah, okay. I get her and Claire Foy mixed up because they look the same. Felicity Jones
yeah.
and of course, the great Guy Pearce as well.
Mousy British woman. Yeah, absolutely. Both fantastic. Love Claire Foy. One more movie to talk about. It's Conclave. It's Conclave by a nose, baby. What better movie was there? A bunch of adults just sitting around talking in rooms. It's a delight. Best movie to show your parents to ever. You know what I mean? And I think Conclave's underrated because it's coming from director Edward Berger, who did All's Quiet on the Western Front, another movie that showed up on Netflix that general audiences mostly did not watch. They probably started it, thought it was weird, didn't finish it, watched it while they were doing their laundry. Conclave, I think, falls into this similar space where it's like, it's a great script and it's great drama. Like, it's tightrope walking stuff, but just general audiences are not going to get around to it. People are going to think it's like, it's lame. It's just dudes talking in rooms. It's such a shame because it's so beautifully shot. I can't believe it didn't get a cinematography nom. Like, I thought it was such a good looking movie, but here we are, right? It's, I think it's I'm going to say underrated one more time, I swear, and then I'll bail on it. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, Conclave was a nice surprise because again, it's a thriller about people talking in rooms and the politics of a conclave vote and what people will do for power, the burden of power, whether or not it's right to want it or not want it, and it's a thriller about voting. It's very like you wouldn't. It sounds like it shouldn't work, and it completely does. It's you will be glued to it. I think it's available on Peacock right now on streaming. What nominated for best score, one of the best scores of the year, by Volker Bertelmann, who also did the score to All Quiet on the Western Front. Great performances by Stanley Tucci, Ray Fiennes, and John Lithgow, and more. Another big surprise, but again, how many people have seen it?
Not enough. That's why I think it's underrated. If you think we missed anything here, by the way, if you got any picks, let us know. Hit the comments, write in the show, mail it off script room review. We love this kind of stuff. A little bit of a dialogue, right? I sure would appreciate it. I hope you do too. And with that, we should jump into our next review of the episode. 2 more to go here. Remember, it's Love Hurts. But first, we got to talk about Osgood Perkins, The Monkey. I'm going to be taking the summary for this one, so please excuse any clumsy delivery. The movie is The Monkey. So, The Monkey is the latest horror film from Longlegs director Osgood Perkins. Touting itself as a horror comedy, The Monkey is based on an original short story from Stephen King, the mind behind It, The Shining, Carrie, and more, wherein 2 brothers, Bill and Hal, find their father's old toy monkey in the attic of their childhood home. Hal's our main character here, a shy boy. He's quiet, he gets bullied, he's the perfect foil for his brother Bill, who is way bigger and way more bold than him, and much more of a, I don't know, alpha. He's just more of a fearless kid. He kind of bullies Hal a little bit. But the 2 of them find a toy monkey in their in their deceased father's belongings. And upon turning the crank in the monkey's back, they realize that a series of gruesome deaths begin to happen around the 2 of them. And they decide this must be coming from this evil toy monkey. We should throw it away. And things start to settle down until one fateful day in the future when then adult Hal gets a call from his brother Bill after strange things begin happening again. After receiving the news, Hal and his young son Petey have to do the right thing. So they travel back home to put a stop to the monkey once and for all. At 98 minutes in length, The Monkey promises to be something totally unique from Osgood Perkins' previous work, but does the comedy work? Is The Monkey scary, and is it funny? And most importantly, are offbeat horror fans going to go for this? So Andy, I gotta know, what did you think of The Monkey?
So I really, really enjoyed this. We got a sneak peek at it, which was really nice. It is funny. It is so funny. And that's what I think was most expected, because a lot of times horror comedies don't really do either one very well. They're usually not that funny, and they're usually not that scary. This isn't really scary, but it is very gory. I think this is actually part of what kicked off my Final Destination watch, because a lot of these deaths are a little Final Destination-esque in that Rube Goldberg kind of way. But man, I had a great time. It is so funny, especially the first act when they're mostly kids are our leads, and they're discovering the monkey and the rules, which they know that people will die if they turn the key, and also that they cannot get rid of the stupid thing. They try and destroy it. They try and throw it down a well. No matter what, it always find a way in that supernatural way, just kind of finds its way back every time. But man, it's so funny, and it's got a lot of gory, gruesome kills that are still very lighthearted and kind of cynical in a way. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think The Monkey is good. And I think a lot of people are going to say The Monkey is bad. I think it's going to be divisive, because I think a lot like Longlegs, I think people don't really have a good read for what Osgood Perkins is trying to do. And I'm not really sure I do either, but I could tell you that I laughed a lot watching The Monkey. I thought this movie was very funny, wildly cynical, horribly chaotic, and ultimately like a lesson about just how brutal life can be and how there's no way you can control that. Tatiana Maslany has a great line in the trailer, but it's in the movie obviously as well. She's like, everybody dies. And it's like, it's kind of true. And it's funny in this way that it's so harsh and cruel. And like Perkins clearly is drawing from his history. You were telling me when we were doing research for the show that he had some deaths in his family related to like 9/11. And like my man is coming from a place where like bad things happen in the world. And this monkey represents this like object of chaos, this idea that this thing, when it starts doing its drumming and starts whirs up and bad things are going to follow. And it's a great intro to the movie, a great guest spot that I don't want to give away. There's a few guest stars in here, but they do a really good job of setting this thing up and being like, listen, here's the rules of our haunted object, which is important in any good haunted object movie. Like, when it starts playing music, bad things happen. You don't want the monkey to play music. It's not a toy. Don't ever call it that. And it's good because as the movie starts progressing and the boys find this thing, they have this childlike curiosity. What's it do? How does it work? And then something awful happens and they're like, I can't believe it. And the way things happen to people in this movie is almost like Looney Tunes level of violence. Like it's like Wile E. Coyote getting crushed by his own rock, except horribly gory, of course, because this is from the director of Longlegs. And walking that horror comedy line is fine. And it's a fine line to walk, I should say. And I think it's difficult for a lot of good horror comedies to hit it. The ones you remember the best are going to be like Evil Dead 2, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Osgood Perkins manages to bring a personality that neither of these movies have. This is totally unique. It feels like its own thing and its own energy. And I just think a lot of general audiences aren't going to get it. And they're going to feel like it's not funny or it's weird or it's awkward, because a lot of it is like in an attempt to be funny and tell a joke and have funny cuts. You make a lot of creative decisions that are different from your typical horror movie. And I think The Monkey stands out in that way, but I think people will also dislike it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's also that's what I was going to get to, in that we get in the beginning, we get the young version of our two twin characters. They suffer several deaths in the family, and then we meet them again as adults, and the brothers are somewhat estranged, and one of them also, he has a son, but they're getting divorced. He's in the middle of a divorce. He's somewhat estranged from his son, but he kind of wants to stay away because he feels like he's cursed. And so there's this family drama that's also kind of represented by the monkey, and this kind of ongoing things that are buried within the family that no one wants to talk about or address, and just kind of pretend aren't there. So we have that going on, and I felt like that stuff was pretty effective as well.
Yeah, Theo James is excellent as Hal, and also he plays his twin counterpart Bill in the movie. He's tremendous. Not only does he play both of these parts really well, but his lead Hal is like so terrified of the world around him. Like it'd almost be better if the monkey had just killed him at some point. Like he almost would be better off, because instead he has to be this like terrified man who's like, I can't see my son ever, because if he's around me, he's going to croak, and nobody can spend, like, I have to be alone and be by myself. And he manages to be this guy who just has this funny, like he's just got this hunch in his back, and he's just like, I just try to be quiet and be to himself. And then, like, inevitably, this monkey kind of comes back to his life, and as soon as it spins back up, he's like, he's like horrified, and somebody around him in the room like dies horrifically in these like just the goofiest, goriest, bloodiest deaths I've seen on screen all year. Like in a way that is so delightful, I think, for big horror fans. Like I think people would really enjoy it. But alternatively, I've seen a lot of people say like it totally doesn't work, and it's awkward, and it's not funny, and it's not scary. And I think I appreciate those opinions, because yeah, it's definitely different, but it worked for me. Like I ended up having a lot of fun with this stuff. Additionally, Tatiana Maslany, who plays the boy's mom, yeah, she's like so disaffected and far away from everything, and she just has these like really goofy line deliveries that feel really deliberate. Big departure from her work in like Disney She-Hulk. Really refreshing to see her doing something fresh here. And for what it's worth, like for the parts, like while the monkey isn't always funny, it's not always scary either. But when it's really funny, I think it's really funny. And when it's really spooky, it's really spooky. There's some of those good long legs takes where like the camera just keeps just peering out into the darkness. You feel like you just start to see something out there, but you can't quite get it together. Like I like the way Osgood Perkins shoots a horror movie. I like the blocking. I like the way this stuff looks. I've heard people say the exact opposite. They hate the way his movies look. They're underexposed. They don't look any good. Like I enjoy it. I don't know. I like both of these movies.
So I wanted to talk about the kills a little bit. The action and gore really surprised me sometimes, because you see some of it is hinted at. It's feel like at the very beginning you see the monkey at a pawn shop, and a character drops something which releases a harpoon which skewers the guy. It's very comical. A lot of it is that, but man, some of the kills are just like kind of blew me away. I was like, oh my god, I was not expecting that at all. And so it does a good job of giving you a range of things, from very complicated to very quick to very gory to some less dramatic. But it's a big surprise, and again, it's so funny.
Yeah, like it's these like pink mist explosions, like just absolute explosions of gore sometimes are so goofy. And it's funny because some of them are in the trailer. Like there's a couple of quick shots in here that like I watching back, having seen them in the movie, I can't believe, or just like chilling on YouTube. But without context, it just looks like a goofy like you don't really get it. In the movie, like the horror comes from the context. And like that's such a big part of the message of the movie that like nobody's got any control over anything. Everybody dies. It's all chaos, shut up and dance. Like that's kind of that. I feel like that's kind of the larger message you're getting from the movie. And I think it's good stuff. Like it just feels like a smaller project. It feels almost experimental. I've been seeing ads saying that you could screen it at a local church, which is baffling for a whole other set of reasons. But like, I think it's not a bad follow up to Longlegs. I don't think it's as big or mainstream as that's supposed to be. I get why the advertising is odd for the monkey. I feel like the studio doesn't really know how to sell it to people. They're just saying like, it's a Stephen King thing, right? Stephen King wrote it. It's good. Osgood Perkins and Stephen King, come see the movie. And it's a shame because I think it's smart. I do. I don't know. I don't think it's going to get its flowers. I think people are going to be divided on this and it's just going to come out and be like middling. And I don't know. Maybe someday people will look back and like it more. Maybe I'm just talking over it.
I wanted to just say one last thing. So originally this is based on a Stephen King story, and that monkey is supposed to be the kind of classic monkey with cymbals, but in the movie it's a monkey with a drum. And the reason is that apparently Disney has copyrighted Monkey with Cymbal from Toy Story 3 or 4. And so they weren't allowed to have it in the movie, and so they changed it to a drum, which I think actually works really well. But it was interesting to learn that.
Yeah, I honestly think it works better. Great example of like a creative hurdle actually working out better for the project. I never would have known that. I didn't put that together at all. I completely forgot that the original monkey toy isn't a drummer and actually has cymbals. Yeah, it wasn't until after I'd seen the movie that somebody pointed that out, and I was like, oh my god, you're right. That didn't affect the movie at all. The drum arguably works better for the imagery for what's going on here. So I think Monkey's a good time. We should get to formal recommendations. I know, so here it is. I gotta ask Andy, would you recommend the Monkey?
Yeah, I would. I had a great time. It is incredibly funny. I was so surprised by the amount of humor in it. It's almost more of a comedy with some horror than a horror comedy. It has a lot of gruesome, action-packed kills that are also very humorous. It's both cynical and also kind of has a lot to say about the nature of death and dying, and also it's a family drama. Theo James is really good as kind of playing multiple characters. There's some fun cameos and surprises. Um, big surprise. Really liked it. It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend.
Yeah, same. I think the Monkey's a great time. Like I love these big Rube Goldbergian setups for kills, like you said, right out of something like Final Destination or Saw. Monkey's got a ton of them. It's funny. It's funny in a way that I think other things aren't. And while it doesn't always work, like overall, I think it's a good project. I'm really glad we got to go see it. I think it's a much more fun date night movie than like Captain America: Brave New World. Like go see this with somebody. At least you'll have something to talk about at the end. You walk out like, good God, what was that? You know, and you'll either, if you're not careful, you might just like it. So that's The Monkey. One more movie to talk about, and then we're wrapping up episode 282. Andy saw this one, and I didn't see this one. I should have gone to see it, but I got scared by the Rotten Tomatoes reviews. I'll be honest. I was a little wary, and I'm excited to be covering it here in a off-script micro review. So with that, I will get out of your way. Andy, please take it away.
Love Hurts. So this is a new action comedy romance film starring Quan, who is a real estate, not developer, a realtor, and he's like top salesman. Everyone loves him. He, always shows up with cookies. Very successful. And then it's very quickly revealed that he is or used to be a master assassin. He started a new life. It started over, wants to leave that life behind, but of course in these things it's impossible to completely walk away. His old partner resurfaces with an ominous message, saying that, I'm coming to get you. Other people are involved, and it's a whole like, you double crossed my brother, you stole from him. His older brother was kind of chief assassin as well. The plot is kind of inconsequential. This was made by the same people who made Bullet Train from a couple years ago. The action is what really works in this movie. The action is top notch. It's incredible. It's really violent. It is a rated R movie, but it's a lot of fun. It's really entertaining. Unfortunately, the plot elements that hold everything together don't really work. It's very cliche. It's very ham-fisted. We do have some other fun characters. Ariana Debose, Oscar winner Ariana Debose is in this, along with Marshawn Lynch, who's credited as Marshawn Beast Mode Lynch in the credits, and he yells Beast Mode. That's part of his brand. He, of course, is a former NFL player, made famous by the "I'm only here so I don't get fined" quote. So it was fine. It's not very long. It's only 82 minutes. It's just a little paint by number, a little cliche, but the action really works.
Currently, Love Hurts is standing at an 18% certified rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Too harsh? What do you think? Like, what is going on? It can't be that bad, right? I mean, everybody wants Ke Huy Quan to be in a sick movie. Everybody wants my man to have his moment, I think. So what's going on? What doesn't work here?
Again, it's the plot elements. This former assassin turned realtor. It's funny, but just the relationships between the characters don't really work. They're not convincing. The plot's just real generic, and it's not. Like I got a little bored, and it's an 80-minute movie, so that doesn't bode well for it. Like I said, the action stuff is what's top notch. You got some martial arts stuff, you got some gun fu, you got some knife fights and things like that. People getting thrown through windows and doors and all that, fun stuff, martial arts. That's what works well in this movie.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Director Jonathan Eusebio not only has done a ton of stunt work, which is I'm sure where he met Ke Huy Quan, because he's done a lot of stunt work as well. He was a second unit director on a number of features that we've talked about on this show. Violent Night, Birds of Prey, Deadpool 2, Beta Furious. While this is his first big feature, like clearly action is the thing this guy does well. It doesn't look like there's any problems there, but it is a bummer that you're losing it in the character performances, right? Fortunately, you got big talent. Like around Ke Huy Quan, you got Ariana Debose, right? Who's a big deal. Marshawn Lynch, who we loved in Bottoms. So the last time I saw him, he's great as a teacher in that. Like no complaints about either of those guys, but it's a quick movie, right? It's less than 90 minutes. Like how's the pace? It's got to be moving quick.
Like I said, the action stuff is great. It does kind of get bogged down in the exposition scenes, and it's just kind of that's where it kind of turns a little bit into a snooze fest.
How's the comedy? Is it funny? Good laugh?
It's got good jokes, some visual gags, some other jokes. Sean Astin's also he's like the boss of Ke Huy Quan, and he's got this not Southern Texas accent. He's got a cowboy hat on the film. The jokes are okay. Like I said, the action is the bread and butter of this movie.
I want to know about the Valentine's connection, because there's a lot of that all over the marketing, right? A lot of the like sweetheart candies, and at one point I see Ke Huy Quan's wearing like a Valentine shirt. Like I'm guessing that's what's going on in the movie. It's around the 14th. I'm assuming, because there seems to be a lot of theming.
It is that, and also his ex-partner, who is played by Ariana Debose, is the one she's kind of sending these ominous letters to, or Valentine's to people, being like, "Love hurts," or like, "I'm coming for you." These sorts of things. Also, there's a very unconvincing B plot where Ke Huy Quan's co-worker gets involved with one of the assassins romantically, and it's real cheesy. Like, I mean, maybe it works as a date movie. I feel like your girlfriend might be mad at you if you take her to see this, because it's not, again, the romance is real light,
right? It's romance secondary
adjacent.
Or thirdly, right? Yeah, it's mostly action and comedy that you're coming for. Gosh, I want to ask about soundtrack, but I don't know if there's anything to ask that way. Is Ke Huy Quan get another lead feature after this? You think this is probably the one and done? I mean, my man's a great supporting actor. He's going to be in Goonies too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. He needs more work. I really hope he gets to doing more. Him and Ariana Debose too, both Oscar winners, and they're doing this like kind of B movie. So I hope he gets more work, and better work rather.
Yeah, me too. Like everybody, man. Like this movie looked cool, but it reminded me a lot of, I think it was last year's Stuber, if you remember that movie with Kumail Nanjiani and Dave Bautista. Stu drives an Uber, and Kumail Nanjiani picks up Dave Bautista's like mercenary character, and they have this goofy romp. It's like surprisingly fun time at the movies, and a lot like how 90s movies used to be, right? Just cranking out like a low budget something. but unfortunately underperforms like in the current climate, in the current movie theater market. People just don't turn out for this kind of stuff, and it's a bummer because like there was a time this is what movies were all about. Not so much anymore, but glad to see they're putting one out. I gotta know, would you recommend Love Hurts?
I would say save it for streaming. Again, the action is where it's at. The action stuff is really good. It's almost one of those things like just wait for the action compilation on YouTube in a couple of weeks because it's not doing well at the box office, so it's going to be on VOD soon. The performances are fine. It's a bad plot. It's not well written. Characters are very thin. It's really cliche, but the action stuff is great.
Well, I appreciate you watching. For those of us at home and for me and for everybody else who listens to Off Script, we all appreciate you taking the plunge. And man, that's Off Script episode 282. Good Lord. What are we watching next week, Andy?
So we're going to be taking a look at Flow, which is on HBO Max, which is an animated film. I don't know the plot of it, but it is Oscar nominated for Best Animated Feature. And then we're going to be taking a look at what's out in theaters. Usually we know, but we want to try and see if we can catch one of the Oscar films, either Nickel Boys or I'm Still Here or something else that we haven't quite seen yet. But we have to wait till Wednesday and Thursday to see what's going to be out over the weekend. So we'll something Oscar nominated in theaters and Flow on HBO Max. And I also wanted to point out the another FYI release, the Daisy Ridley thriller Cleaner, where she plays a window washer who somehow gets involved as in negotiating in some sort of murder plot, assassin plot. I don't know. It doesn't look very good, but that's also out this week. And coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have the 2025 Oscars, which are Sunday, March 2nd. Next week, we'll be doing our predictions, our Oscar predictions, and then, of course, Mickey 17 on March 7th.
Very excited for Mickey 17 and excited to watch Flow next week. I know Bill Hader said that was his favorite film of last year. So if you're a Bill Hader fan, we're covering Flow next week. Gotta come back for it. If you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we're doing here on Off Script, best way to support your boys is just subscribe. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or anywhere you can subscribe or follow. Just throw one at us. It helps engagement like you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't even know how big of a deal it is. Like and subscribe if you can. Leave a comment maybe. Ring a notification bell. I'm sure there's a way to do that around where I'm talking right now. If you're one of our audio listeners on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartMedia, we love you guys. We started on audio. Please leave a rating and review if you can. It helps us more than you know, like in the marketplace. It's a big deal. If you're on YouTube, give us a follow. Big things going on over there. And check out our shorts. We're making a lot more shorts lately, by the way. There's some things brewing over here at Off Script, and we want you in on the fun. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the usual social media places. You can follow us over there. Our website, Off Script Film Review, hosts reviews, additional press content, other stuff we got going on. You can email us directly, direct correspondence from you to us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. That's episode 282 of the show. From all of us at Off Script, the home of Bold Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.